Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. It's been called the silent epidemic, and mental health is a big issue at the moment in Australia and countries around the world, but it's also a big issue in divorce and in negotiations and proceedings. So today we're going to be talking about mental health and how it's viewed in the court system and how it is dealt with through property and children's matters and mediation, and also how you can work around it during your negotiations and divorce proceedings. This is a trigger warning for anybody that does have mental health issues or is dealing with a mental health issue. And of course, if you need any assistance or help after listening to this, please call Lifeline on 131 114. But welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Now, today you noticed something in the paper. We were going to talk about something else, but you noticed something in the paper.
So they're calling it mental health, the silent or hidden epidemic. And on some views, they're saying it's worse than COVID. And, you know, it probably it has been on the increase since the lockdowns, I guess, but it's always been an issue in divorce and separation. So we thought we'd talk about that today. And thank you, Laura, for agreeing.
And I guess that's the main part. I think if lawyers and barristers and judges aside, when you go through divorce, regardless of whether you're the one who left or they left, you know, just that alone can cause some mental health issues if you're sad or upset, depressed, anxious, worried, you know, all of those kind of parts that people go through, that roller coaster of emotions. But on top of that, people may already be depressed or having other mental health issues, personality disorders, which may be the reason why the divorce is occurring in the first place. Yeah. So, and Mum, when the people that you work with and have seen, is there always a small element of mental health?
It is either in a way of protecting their mental health through the process, but nearly everyone that we see is just a walking bundle of emotions. Even if they've initiated the separation, there's that regret and grief. And then if they didn't initiate it, there's that. And just when they're at their very most vulnerable and wondering what's going to happen, the lawyer with no people skills, usually, and the court who has to just be very businesslike and matter of fact, expects people to be making decisions and doing things, you know, in line with the act. And I think the court is only just beginning to recognise that unless people are in a good space in their heads, the cases are going to not run well.
I guess you look at it with children. When I used to be a teacher, if a child was acting out and doing some, you know, naughty behaviours, it's usually because something bad's going on at home or they've got, you know, something going on in the background. And I guess that's the same with court. You know, if you've got these two respondent and applicants and they're going gangbusters at each other, maybe it's because of the underlying issues that are going on behind the scenes. Let's talk about, Mum. So there's elements that are dealt with mental health in the property side of things of divorce, the children's side of things of divorce, and mediation. So let's talk about property first. How is mental health accommodated for or viewed in by the court through the property lens if someone's going through property?
It comes up in a couple of ways. Okay, so it may come up in terms of a person's capacity to work going forward, if they're mentally unwell, even if they've been successful in business or whatever that means, or working full time, they may not be able to work going forward for some time because of their mental health. And that, if it's severe enough, can reflect in an increased percentage of the property pool to that person who no longer has the capacity to work or who will need time to recover to be able to go back to work. It's also relevant to some extent if someone's had a lot of mental health issues during the marriage. That's quite that does sort of limit their ability to contribute. But the court only looks at that as any other disability. It's like a broken leg or a broken arm, and, the extent to which it made someone's contribution a bit more onerous. But generally it is more impacted in looking forward as to their possibility of them going to work, being able to support themselves.
Okay, and I guess you're referring there to future
Section
needs.
75(2) or the de facto equivalent.
And if you're interested in learning more about future needs, and if you have mental health issues that you think are significantly impacting your ability to work in the future, have a listen to the episode Future Needs. We'll put it in the show notes, and Mum gives you all the details that you need to know about that element in the property part. So we've got that mental health in the future needs. So maybe, there's someone that can't work as well, they're going to need support, so that's how a court considers that. What about in children's cases? So custody, parental responsibility. So, for example, maybe our listener has depression and, I don't know, some sort of other mental health issues. How does that affect in children's cases through the court side?
Well, the cases generally deal with it this way. Sometimes it's not unusual for someone to be depressed, of course, or they acknowledge it's not unusual for a person to be temporarily depressed, even if they're normally quite well. And then there are the people who have ongoing issues like depression or anxiety. The court looks at it in two ways. They look at it if it's treated or if it's untreated. So if you have a mental health condition for which you are medication compliant, taking your medicine, regularly checking in with your doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, then the court is happy to accept that you will be going forward able to parent the children effectively because you've put in appropriate medical support. And again, to draw that analogy with someone who had, like a broken leg, can they manage the children? Well, yes, if they've got crutches, wheelchair, whatever they need to help them to function properly. So you just look for outside assistance. The courts are worried more about untreated mental health issues if they are impacting on your parenting ability and impacting the children. So they worry about children who, for one reason or another, become carers of their parents. They become parentified. Usually the eldest child in the family will be looking after the mentally ill parent and also the younger children in the family. So the court would be worried about that. So what they're wanting to see is they're not worried about the condition. Generally, the judges aren't. They're just worried about, are you managing it? And, is the medication efficient and working and you're taking it?
Okay, so if you are a listener and you have mental health issues, you've been diagnosed with something, in their affidavits and in their, their presentation to the court, if they're going through the court process, it's important for them to show maybe some sort of detailed information or a plan, a management
Insight.
plan.
And I'm not talking about where you feel fine, but where your ex is saying, well, if he doesn't love me anymore, he must be mad. Or if she doesn't love me anymore, she's off her head. It's not that sort of throwaway line. It's the actual condition. And if it's suggested that you have a mental health condition, you need to go and get assessed, or you need to go and consult somebody so they can definitively say, no, you're fine. It might be what they call situational and just around the separation. Some of my clients in the past were medicated just to get them through the divorce process because, it's just a terrible time for everybody. And it's easy to think it's better to hide it. It's easy to try to suppress it so that it can't be used against you. But it's really better in nearly all cases, and this is general advice only, but it's generally better to look after yourself, look after your mental health, get a plan, and move forward on it so the court can see that, that's being dealt with, and put that issue aside.
If, only 2% or something, 2.4%, I think it was, you said, end up in actual trials. Yes. If it does end up in a trial, is that when maybe they would have experts talking about your mental health?
But also in the interim allegations, like if there's an interim hearing, it might even be in the very first affidavit they write. So if you get an affidavit or a letter from the other side that mentions your mental health, then now that's the time to start putting your supports in place. So the very first time you go before the court, you can say, yeah, but... or no, and here's the proof, or yes, I have, but I'm seeing these people and I'm doing this.
And this is what I do. What about if it's the other way round? And we get a lot of messages on Instagram in particular from people saying, my ex is really struggling, their mental health is really bad. What am I supposed to do? So if it's the other way around, what should you be doing to ensure that you're doing the right thing by the children?
Well, you've got to make sure your kids are safe, of course. But then it's not really your business anymore. If you're separated, you will be very unwelcome if you write and suggest kindly that they get some help for mental health. I don't think that's going to work. You can reach out to relatives of theirs or friends of theirs that you know and ask them to check in. Get them to ring Lifeline on 131114 if they're having trouble. Tell their friends to help, their parents, someone to just check in on them. It really matters if they don't get treated. That really matters. But if they're getting treatment and slowly recovering, or bearing in mind they're still grieving, they may be grieving the marriage. Another thing to do is to just take your time, give them some time. Don't push things too much. We don't want children with an absent parent through suicide. It impacts everybody. And so gently does it as and when they can handle it. It's going to require a lot of patience. Sometimes even waiting until they go through the grieving phase and get to angry, and then they can start the negotiations, and then you're out of the woods. But be very wary of pushing too hard if they're vulnerable. And this is typically our avoidant person who doesn't want to face it. I mean, you can't wait forever, but if you think that giving it a couple of months, just letting things drift for a couple of months might be better, try that. And we give some excellent strategies for avoidant people. You'll tone your correspondence down.
We've got an episode. We've got an episode called "How to Divorce a Statue." So that's all about how to do that avoidant separation. But so we've got the avoidant with mental health issues. What about high conflict with mental health issues, Mum? What if they're being we've had someone who's just messaged us yesterday, and the question we put up was, what's the hardest thing you're dealing with at the moment? And she said, getting all these letters from my ex all the time, and now a magistrate's ordered she has to respond to them within 6 hours. That kind of high conflict mental health issue, that seems to come through a lot in a lot of our messages. What if a listener out there has that going on, and I know we did an episode on being bombarded with legal letters, what you can do about it. How does the court deal with that side of things?
Well, given that the court has a very high emphasis now on settlement, on negotiated outcomes and cooperation between people, then they take a very dim view of someone who's high conflict. If they're high conflict and it's because they've got a mental health issue, then back to the basics. Are they getting treatment for it? Is that closing down the high conflict a bit? Is that working? If not, then I think that the court needs to know that the high conflict person just is probably never going to stop. What if they haven't got a mental health issue? They're just that sort of person. So I think the key is if it's mental health related and they get treatment, then the high conflict situation is probably only temporary, or at least it will relax. I think my short answer, as you were asking me that question, I was thinking to myself, strap yourself in. Strap yourself in, because it's going to be a wild ride. But
And we shouldn't laugh because I know so many people out there are going through such a heck of a time. Yeah. And I think this mental health issue, really, when you think about it, when you plop it in there, it just exacerbates everything.
Laura. And I can remember Justice Barry, who is passed away now, rest in peace, but he said, you only end up in a trial if one of the parties is being unreasonable. Or at least, he should have said, at least one of the parties is being unreasonable. So, sometimes in spite of your best efforts of doing everything you can to make sure you're supported and your mental health is supported and you're actually doing these negotiations, I think in good faith, it's important, you may still find yourself dragged to the door of the court because someone else hasn't got treatment for their condition.
Why then? Just putting it out there into the universe.
It's going to be hard. Why? Throw it at me, Rose.
Why haven't they made it mandatory like mediation? If you're going to go to court, you must have mediation. Why not make it mandatory that you must go and see a counsellor and discuss the issues with the counsellor?
Why not? Well, they haven't done it because I think it might be helpful, but where are these counsellors going to come from? Where there's a huge shortage of psychologists and support people.
That's true.
All our clients will know, all our listeners will probably know, if you've tried to reach out to some of these services, I don't know where all the workers went during COVID, but they're under the pump.
They gave up, walked off.
And so I think, though, even though it's not ordered by the court, I don't think a mental health check-in is a bad idea for anyone going through it. And you can do it by telehealth, and just check in because we could all benefit from a little extra support. And your family and your friends will probably get in the hole with you and go, yes, that's outrageous. How that? But they're not actually offering constructive ways for you to deal. So telehealth, I'd suggest doing some meditation. I've been in court with clients who have become distraught. We've turned out the light in the interview room and done a little meditation, a little calm meditation, which sounds very new age.
I would love someone to walk past and be like, why are they in there with the lights on?
Well, it's what it takes.
But yes, it works. And, there's an app, there's the Calm app. And the Calm app even now has, for busy people like me, because I hate sitting still, it has walking meditation. So you can do it while you're walking. And I gave it a try today, and it actually worked.
Well, they also have a silent one that I have been known to use, and it's only like a couple of seconds, but it's breathe in, breathe out, and it's got a little circle that expands and goes, and it's amazing. I like telling someone to take a deep breath and count to 10 is the old way, but now we're much more high-tech than that.
We'd much rather do it when a phone tells us to. So if it's not mandatory yet to go and do like mediation, some sort of counselling, are there some structures in place that people put in orders, perhaps the judges put in place for mental health that maybe some of our listeners could consider if they're going into negotiations and their partner or they have mental health issues? What kind of safeguards can be put in an orders for to help
this would apply to children's matters really going forward. I said, when property is settled, it's none of your business if the other person gets treatment or not. But with children's orders, the court may make an order, or you might make one by consent perhaps, that says that...
and just to stop you there, Mum, by consent means you both agree
you could either both
agree
to it, or a court might impose it if you went to a hearing. And the court might say something like this. Well, I won't give the legal terms, but they're the orders go, as long as X continues to see their psychiatrist/psychologist, doctor such and such, or it might not even name the person, and comply with the medication, then the following time will happen with the children. And so that that's kind of a precondition, and they need to, and they probably, in some orders, they'll put in ways of proving that, or they might say that the other person, the other parent, is authorised to contact that psychiatrist or psychologist to get a record of how many times or how frequently the partner's going, just to make sure they're still going. You don't get access, never would get access to what's being discussed, but you may be able to, in an extreme case, just keep an eye on how frequently they're going and that they're getting their treatment so that they can continue to see the kids. So if you've got, if you're looking at orders that'll finalise things and some things are still fluid, like is that person going to continue to get their, go to the doctor. So that you can make it their time with the kids conditional upon them getting that treatment, or you could say,
sorry to interrupt this podcast, but we have some valuable information that might just help you out. If you're separated or about to be and ready to get everything finalised and sorted, but you don't know what to do next, or you're looking for a way to do your own divorce and settlement without spending thousands of dollars on lawyers, or you're looking to make property and parenting agreements and finalise your divorce papers with your ex-partner while keeping in control and in the know of each step and stage that needs to be done in the legal process, then you already know what you need to do, and that is to sign up to our DIY Divorce Blueprint. Empower, educate and equip yourself with the legal know-how and tools you need to get divorced and finally settle. Work through this course at your own pace without feeling confused, lost, scared and overwhelmed with the family law legal jargon and processes. We invite you to the DIY Divorce Blueprint, lovingly created by Mum, with over 40 video lessons, PDF, templates, swipe files and letter template guides. We're there for you. Enroll now. Go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and find out more.
So that you can make it their time with the kids conditional upon them getting that treatment, or you could say that they have this treatment, that they have the children or you have the children at these days, and that you or that person will continue to attend upon their psychiatrist or their doctor or whatever it is. Okay, so it's not as you're only going to see the kids if you keep going to your psychologist or psychiatrist. That's one really strong one and allowing you to check. And a less strong one is just an order that you must continue to get treatment. And what the court will do then is say for as long as that treating practitioner, psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, considers necessary. So you really, the person shouldn't stop. They're bound by that order unless they get a letter from the psychologist that says, you know what, I don't need to see you anymore. You're fine, off your trot. Okay, so that's a different way that they can do it. Another way that they could do it is to have supervision for a person who's got some mental health issues, but that way they can still see the child and the children can see that parent safely and retain that connection.
So supervision means that somebody else is present when the parent is with the children, whether it's grandparents or at a contact centre,
that kind of supervision.
And that's, and is it possible to have orders that kind of step it out so it's scaffolded?
It can be,
but
except that a person is either medication compliant and controlled, or they're not. I don't think you can work. You can't assume, and I do remember making this argument once to the court, that a person's condition will be completely improved in 2 years and therefore we remove the supervision. Do you know, that supervision phrase really rankles people a lot if they're ordered to have time supervised by anybody. And I just wonder, I like to think of it as supported by, and really it's...
Maybe they need to change
supported,
supported.
So the children's time with the parent is supported by such and such.
Look, and if that's the only way that you can get to see your children, then I would be taking it hands down to see my children, I guess. And it's a hard pill to swallow, I guess, for some parents because, they say, they're my children. I'm capable. I guess, though, when you have a mental health issue, you're not fully aware of the situation, I guess, and that's the whole problem with mental health, I guess. It's the trickiness of it. So, okay, so that's how the court can order maybe some scaffolding around mental health with children. Mum, is it, like I've watched a lot of detective murder thingies and people get off of committing murder because they've been committed insane or, they've got a multiple personality disorder or they're schizophrenic and they don't get charged with proper murder because, you know, they didn't technically do it because of them, it was their mental health. Does that kind of rule apply in the family court? Like, is there, like, when people do things that are really bad or wrong, or they don't follow the orders, or they're just off the tangent, just do they get off on that as well because of that?
Some orders are orders, and they're mostly to protect the children. So there's not a lot of leniency there. But in procedural matters, it depends on the judge you get. But one lovely judge here in Queensland, I heard him give a little talk about drug use, and this person hadn't filed any documents when they were supposed to. And he said in his experience, people who take hard drugs don't usually manage to file their documents, and they don't usually get to court on time. But he said it's like a broken arm or a broken leg or diabetes. You have to choose to get treated. And so I think that in terms of the children, they take no chances, right? So you may end up with a supervised order, or you may end up with no time. But in terms of the actual rules of the court, we're a lot less, I guess, judgy about it, a lot less black and white. I can remember when having marijuana during the marriage was enough to stop you seeing the kids. But now it's much more nuanced, you know, but the kids are the main thing.
And this is general advice only. Don't go starting smoking marijuana. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about the words. Yeah, that's true. Generally what happens is, he or she smoked marijuana during the marriage, and then they come back and go, well, she did too. And then the court's like, yes, but what are you doing now?
Dear.
We don't want to look back. We're looking now. And they might order drug tests and things for that, hair tests. So when you were talking about the new words, when I was talking about using maybe a new word for supervision, we did change words years ago because we used to have custody and access. And custody, people wanted full custody, and it became a very possessive term. So in 2006, probably the only change, or one of the very few changes in 2006 that I agree with to the Family Law Act, they took out that word custody and said lives with, and a child can then live with both parents. They can live with one parent, even if it's 13 days a fortnight, and live with the other one day. But just that change of language,
the psychological barrier
really assisted.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like one's the baddie and one's the goodie. You know, it might be purely practical reasons. Yeah.
Okay. So again, if this has brought any issues up with you, of course, call Lifeline 131114. But Mum, I guess when it comes to anybody who's listening, they might not be in the court system yet, but either they have mental health issues, or their ex or the co-parent has mental health issues. What are some tips on how people can work around it during negotiations? Because court is a different thing. Once you've got an order set in place to scaffold and manage it, that's fine. But what about during negotiations? If, say, like you said, people, of course, are going to be depressed. It's one of the most stressful times you can have in your life, along with moving and changing jobs. Moving on from a partner and all of that is
losing your house
crazy.
Maybe, or so it's just awful.
Yeah, all of that. It's like a whole rebirth, and some people, it does take time for them to get through it. If you're trying to negotiate with someone who is really struggling with their mental health, what kind of strategies do you have? And that's, you know, how do lawyers work around it, like when you're dealing with that negotiation?
So the way that I would work around it, and this would include in a mediation or leading up to mediation when you talk about negotiations, I would consider what sort of things might trigger the other person and avoid those. I get my clients to read the letter through, and if you've got someone who is absolutely, like, they might have a job, they might be a nurse, a registered nurse, and you call them a nurse's aide in the letter, that's going to send them off. Get your client, I always get my client, and you guys, you can read it yourself, just make sure you haven't accidentally or even on purpose put anything in a letter that might stop them reading the whole letter, so to speak, but just reacting to that one little bomb in there. So I always keep in mind the audience of any written communication that I have and what they're thinking. And I'll often say to my clients, okay, if we write this, what is it in there? Is he going to say no to? What should we be wary of? And so that's one way of doing it. Again, it matters if it's treated.
And I think just Mum, can I just mention there that, and I know there'll be some people out there that are like, I don't care if they have mental health issues. That's their problem. They put that on themselves because maybe they cheated or maybe they left them or whatever it is. So people are like, I don't care. It's their problem. But I think what you're trying to say is, to stay out of court, to get it sorted, to get it negotiated, doing the tiptoe on eggshells or tiptoeing around their triggers in the short term to get what you want is a means to an end, I guess, and you just got to suck it up.
Like you're on eggshells to avoid their triggers is probably what you've been doing the whole marriage, or at least towards the end of the marriage, to the point where you'd had enough. And so sometimes I do get clients who are just fed up with being nice. But this is a means to an end, and I always say to them, you've done it for 10 years, 20 years, whatever. You can do it for another couple of months. It doesn't matter that he's getting empowered or she's getting empowered. Who cares? You get what you want, and it depends, and get you out. So that's how I would regard that. And if you've got kids, you've just got to think more of the kids. They've all been through it. If you've been on eggshells, so have they. If you upset the other parent, then they're going to be parented by someone who's upset. It just never, I find in life, and I'm, getting on, so I can pontificate, but if you do things other than from a place of love, it has a really bad ripple effect. So just try to be a little bit compassionate, no matter how big a jerk or a bitch she is. Sorry, no matter how bad they are.
But no, I guess that's true. I think you're just going to have to go, but I've already left them for that reason. I don't want to keep giving them this kind of thing. That's their problem. But I think what you've got to just kind of suck it up and go, okay, this is for a short-term situation. Once the divorce is finalised, once the orders are set in place, when everything's done, then I can set my boundaries, and what's their problem is their problem, and it's no longer mine, I guess. Is
beautifully said, Laura. Yeah. That's exactly right. And separation and divorce is a process. It's not an act. It's not the day that you leave the house or they leave the house.
It's not a switch. No,
you wish.
It's not a switch. Oh, really? If we could invent that switch, we would sell it for $1 million. No, we'd sell it for free so everyone can just turn off.
But you can't. It took you a long time to get married.
No.
That's how you think. I think about that from when you met to when you marry. It took a long time, and so expect it to take a while to get out of the situation, and you've made the first step if you've left, but it is a process. So hold on a bit longer, if you can.
Okay, have you got any other tips other than making sure you know what their triggers are and you're not triggering them, even though I know some of you out there are like, oh, I'd love to put that in the letter because that'll really upset them. So don't do that, because that's not going to get you a mediation success. You're going to end up in court.
Don't make things land on their email box on Valentine's Day or their birthdays or Father's Day. Just don't be that person. We always, they're not my clients don't do that. I won't let them.
Any other tips, Mum? Any other tips for anyone dealing with mental health?
We've talked about both sides. We haven't talked about the children. And you touched on it a little bit when you were teaching. I also taught for a while, and I remember that kids, I would later on, they'd be awful during the day, and then later on discover that their parents were in court that day and someone had told the children. So I think you need to tell the school where your kids go. We have a sort of a neutral type letter in our divorce course, but write and tell them factually, just to let you know, little Jimmy's father and I separated on Sunday. He may be a little bit off colour, or could you just please? And that means the teachers can understand what they're dealing with. There's that. Also, children, they can access the school counsellor. The schools are good. They're not going to be the only kids at the school with that issue. And so they need their support because they're the only ones probably in the whole setup between you, your partner, and them that don't feel relief. So you and your partner probably deep down there's a sense of relief that it stopped. You had to separate. From the kids' point of view, they were perfectly fine, and all they ever want is for the parents to get back together again. That's all they ever want. So there's grieving for them to do. And they've got two parents who are negatively impacted by what they're going through. So it's pretty awful. So just don't forget the kids and the support they need. I really have always got a cranky when people go, oh, well, they're resilient. Children are resilient. No, they're not. And she's old enough to know. No, she's not. So don't put your adult stuff on the kids, no matter how desperate you feel. You can't do that. You can't. Just after all, they're the future, and your conduct now and the support they get now will determine whether or not they can successfully have their own relationship, choose a good life partner, and if they're raising children, do that well. So it's your gift to the future if you keep your stuff separate and keep it away from the kids and support the children so it's minimal impact on them. If you don't do it, if you dump on the kids or cry on the kids or speak negatively about their other parents so they feel rubbish in both households, then that's not a gift to your future children and grandchildren. That's a poison chalice you're passing on. So
yes, and I think it is really important as well to note that co-parenting is hard. It's easy for some people, maybe on Instagram, who make it look glamorous, and it's easy, but not everybody's relationships are the same. Maybe you've come from an abusive relationship and you need to somehow co-parent still. Maybe, you've really had your heart broken by someone, and co-parenting is hard, but I guess don't feel like it's your fault and you've broken your children, because sometimes you have to leave, it's better for them. But as long as you know and you show them that they're loved by both parents and that you have that respect there and their ability for both parents, for them to talk that they love about both parents, they're okay to say, having
if they're
fun.
Properly supported, the kids will get through it. And the interviews that I've seen through the Australian Institute of Family Studies, when the children look back, they go, it was much better having two happy parents in two households than to live in one household with parents who were unhappy. So the children, even if deep down they know that the situation wasn't ideal, it takes them a while to realise looking back. And of course, don't forget either, like I said, they're not going to be the only kids at the school, and they talk amongst themselves and they peer support themselves, and they'll quickly find the positives with the 2 Christmases, 2 lots of birthday presents, all of that. If you play your cards right, and no matter how much it galls you, it's a business. Your co-parenting is a business, and you don't have to love or even like your business partner. You just have to do the business of raising those children.
Is there some scaffolding that people can look for to put in their consent orders, in their mediation, or with their parenting orders for mental health for the children?
Yes. Yep.
Are there any things that people discuss in that? So can you give us some examples of what people could think about?
Okay, so court orders, if you're putting them in your orders that you agree to, or if the court's making orders, they won't make orders for the kids to do things, of course. They only make orders about you and your partner or former partner. But they may put an order such as that both parents cooperate and make sure that little Jimmy gets to his psychologist appointments and that he'll continue to go there, or that, he will, they'll support him in going to his school counsellor, or they'll make sure that he continues his extracurricular activities like his footy and his violin and clarinet, all of which support their mental health, the children's mental health. And, with people, even though you're going through this and it feels terrible, try to find some time for you. Try to keep doing the things that give you joy, even if you're dragging yourself there and looking like hell while you do it. Just keep it up. Keep up the walking, the swimming, whatever it is that you love.
The routine.
Just try to take time for yourself so that you can support the kids through it.
And we have done an episode as well on how to just put a pause, basically, when you feel like your divorce process negotiations is spinning out of control. We've done a whole episode on how you can just kind of put a pause on it, if you can, to just get that breather, to have a break, get yourself back into a stable state mentally, so that you can deal with things better. Because when we have a clear mind, when we're mentally well, we can make better decisions. You can make clearer decisions. And the hardest part that we've talked about, Mum, I guess, is you're making decisions that will affect your future, your kids' future, for the rest of goodness knows how long. The best possible decisions, the biggest decisions you're going to have to make, the negotiations, the agreements, percentages, times, dates, whatever. You want to be in the best mental health you can be, because otherwise you're not going to make the greatest decisions. So really putting your mental health as a priority during this phase is so important. And I think, some of us poo-poo meditation or whatever, but just commit to it. Just give it a try. Maybe a gratitude diary or a journal, or going for a walk every day. Just commit to do something, because maybe going for that walk every day or doing that meditation every day might make the difference between you making a boo-boo mistake that may affect you for the next 4 years in your agreement to making the best decisions.
And I'm very reluctant with things like that, being a bit old school. But how I deal with it, because it took me a while to find what resonates with me, so I decided to give everything just a couple of minutes. I can do that for 3 minutes, and I do that for 2 weeks and see if it made me feel any better or change. And you can see things. Read books like The Atomic Habits by James Cleary. He talks about how you can develop a new habit. But if you've never had time for yourself, it's very hard to know what you're kind of going to be into. So I would give different little strategies to try and see if something resonates with you.
Yeah, and maybe put a Facebook post out and be like, hey, anybody got any tips on how they, look after their mental health, or how you
don't put that on Facebook
in case it's using cause. But yeah, so maybe just groups. Ask your friends and have a little try. Yeah, have a try of a little bit of everything. And look, if you're at the separation process where you're no longer a part of a team, you're separated from your partner, whether you're left or not, you're going to have that extra time available.
Take up the ukulele or give it a go.
Try. Yeah.
Find your joy.
So I think, Mum, we're definitely going to do some more in-depth. We're going to do a 2-part series with a psychologist soon, talking about how to help your children through the divorce process, and also how to help yourself. And that psychologist is actually your other daughter.
I have such talented
that's
children.
Going to be a mother and double daughter team in those episodes, and they will be coming up. So if this has resonated with you, definitely, stay tuned for those coming up. And again, if anything has triggered you in this situation, if you're worried about your mental health or somebody else's, ring Lifeline 131 114.
Think of one good reason to stay alive if you're thinking that, and there's no shame in ringing 131114. They can talk to you. It's anonymous, and it just might help you get some perspective. Yeah.
So if that is anything in there that you've got any questions about, you can always email us at the divorcecourspodcast@gmail.com. And of course, starting next week, we are also drawing our next podcast reviewer for a free chat with Mum for 30 minutes. So if you would like to be in the draw for that.
Confidential consultation. Not a chat, and there's no strings attached.
Okay, Mum. No, yes, of course. Mum's not looking for new clients. And if you would like that, please make sure you give us a review on Apple Podcasts, and that would be amazing. Make sure you check out the other episodes that we have coming up. And also, if you haven't already, we've got that webinar coming up on who stays in the house, the properties, the who, what, when, why, where of family law and property. If you would like to come along to that webinar, you just need to go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on reserve your seat, and we will see you there.
Of course, all of what we've said,
thank you so
Laura,
much,
is general advice only, but I'm hoping some of it is relevant and helpful to the people that are listening today. Yep.
And our hearts go out to everybody who messages us and tells us these things. So take care, everyone. Thank you so much, Mum, for coming along, and we'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording,